Hi everyone, I'm Darren Woods, Artistic Director of Seagle Festival, and with me today are Robert Carl, the composer of Harmony, our world premiere, and Russell Banks, the librettist. You know, someone said to me not long ago that this was the opera that almost wasn't. And I said, actually, this is the opera that had to be, because it ran into so much adversity, including COVID. So we're finally here at world premiere night, and we hope everybody's enjoying it. But I just sort of wanted to give a little background. And so, Robert, I think that you had an idea about a Charles Ives opera at some point, and then some sort of magic happened. So you want to start us there?
Sure. It's a real chain of sort of connections and coincidences. I knew that there had been a meeting between Charles Ives and Mark Twain in Hartford on the eve of Ives' marriage to Harmony Twitchell. I don't think much happened in the real historical event other than just the fact that Ives kind of looked over from Twain and Twain said, okay, you'll do. But I kept thinking these two sort of titans of American art, they were there together in the same room for one time. I was thinking, wouldn't it be a nice like little music theater piece? You know, I was thinking probably two characters, a chamber ensemble, something like that. But I was reading a novel of Russell's, and I did not know him at the time. It's called Rule of the Bone. It's a retelling of Huck Finn in contemporary dress, basically. And Twain then was obvious, but in the book, Ives is the subtext. The Huck character, whose name is Bone, the nickname is Bone, steals a bunch of CDs from a home that in fact is Russell's house up in the Adirondacks. And when he's in Jamaica, he starts listening to them and he's completely freaked out. It's Ives. And at that point I said, this man knows Twain and Ives. And so I wrote to him and said, are you interested in this idea of maybe some sort of collaboration? And of course at that point I did not know about your personal connection beyond that, which perhaps you can say.
Yeah, share that with us.
Yeah, well, I had written an introduction to one of the volumes of the reissue of the collected Twain at Oxford University Press. And the editor invited a number of different writers to write introductions, and I chose to write an introduction to A Tramp Abroad, because it was a book that Twain wrote in which he fictionalized his traveling companion, and his traveling companion happened to be my wife's great-grandfather, Reverend Joseph Twitchell of Hartford, Connecticut, of the Silent Hill Church in Hartford. And so therefore I knew well the relationship between Reverend Twitchell and Mark Twain, and knew that my wife Chase's great uncle was Charles Ives, who had married Reverend Twitchell's daughter. So it was a family story, and this is what happens when a family marries a writer. He'll steal your stories, and so I stole the story because I just loved it. It has every aspect of romance and history and art that I care most about, all blended together.
So you got this letter from Robert, and you said, why not?
Well, I had never written a libretto. I loved opera for many years, and I had a few friends who had written, who were not librettists as such, poets and a couple of novelists who had actually written libretti. So I knew it could be done by someone who wasn't a professional librettist. And I had written poetry as a young man, and I had read a number of libretti. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. I've written screenplays and plays, and so I thought, well, let's try this too. And luckily, I really love Robert's music. I listened, of course, before I decided to jump, and said, that's the kind of music I can really work with. And I think he can work with the structure of my narrative and the characters as we bring them forward. And because you have a very literary mind and a very historical mind.
Yeah,
I think you studied history.
I was a history major in college. I wasn't a music major, actually.
And unbeknownst to all three of us, we were in the same theater together, either in 2005 or 6. My memory blurs, but
6.
Your piece was picked up for New York City Opera's Vox program, which is where they would play 20-minute excerpts of operas in development or production. I had one for my company, and yours was there, and I remember hearing it and liking it, and then, you know, many years passed by, and I moved here, and Ann Metcalf, one of our patrons, said, this is a list of important people that you should meet in the North Country. And there was Russell's name, and it said in parentheses, I think he wrote a libretto. And I kept thinking back, and I was like,
How did you
so
know
I
that?
just found Russell's number, and I did a cold call, just like
Yeah,
you
right.
did, Robert, and said, hi, I'm Darren Woods at Seagle Festival, and I'd like to talk to you about your opera. So we met and had coffee,
Right.
and then we met with you,
And one thing led to another, and it was, this whole process from when I first contacted Russell is over 20 years. And it's been, I will say that I think we had a great, I think, sort of why not do it attitude, but we aren't the most experienced opera writers because this is our first one. And I think there was a certain amount of fear and skepticism in companies to take it on.
Yeah.
And for that, by the way, I know, Russell, we are eternally grateful for you for your, taking the step,
Absolutely, yeah.
being the courageous one to take this on.
Well, you breathed life back into it, actually. You resuscitated it because your enthusiasm for it and the opportunity it presented to us forced us to go back to work because we had left it unfinished.
well, when I asked you, I said, how much is finished? And Russell said, only the 2 scenes that you saw. And I was like, oh my goodness, really? That's all it is? And I thank you for that because, Tony Kostecki, our general director, and I, and Richard Kagi, and the people who are the creative artists around here we're big risk takers, and we love new American opera. So, and the fact that this is in Keene Valley and it's Adirondack Story and our beloved mountains are mentioned into it, well, it was a no-brainer the minute Russell kept telling me the story, and my jaw just kept getting harder and harder on the table, going, really, Keene Valley, Charles Ives, are you kidding? So it was a real natural for us when I came back to Tony and said, I think we really need to do this. And so we're just so grateful that you entrusted us with it. And part of the process that the audience might not know is that you guys set about writing it. You came up here to look at the theater and did some work on my front porch,
Yes.
and then came up with this really great conflict that ends Act 1, which most of you have already seen. So looking forward to you seeing how it plays out in Act 2. And then we had a workshop 2 years ago, thinking that we were going to premiere this last year.
Pre-COVID, yes.
And then Harmony got hit once more with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's just such a joy to be bringing this to our audience tonight and having you guys here with us. And is there anything you want to tell a little bit about the music and the musical style?
Well, I would say that the musical style is in the spirit of Ives. Ives is an incredibly important composer to me, and I hope I have my own voice, but I also see him as a great ancestor. He's a sort of aesthetic great-granddad. So that aspect is in music. People who know Ives' music will hear certain things that are very much like Ives, but nothing is really a literal quote.
Right, but you use a lot of folk melodies, like hymn melodies type.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Americana in it,
Right.
so it'll now and then go a little off the rails, and then it'll come right back in. So I think that it's something that people can continue to follow and not get confused. I hope they won't get confused by it.
I don't think they have from the reaction in the first act. I think it's pretty great so far. Well, I just think this story is so great, and that you guys were able to put it together, and that Harmony might be 20 years old, but she's just newborn today.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's really exciting, and we're looking forward to the next performance. And maybe we'll make another opera one of these days.
I would love to.
Who knows? Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we really appreciate it all.